Hello and welcome to today's Battle Mech review. Today we're going to look at a mech that I actually ate. Not because I hate it because it's a bad mech or anything, even though some people might say that. It's just, this is a mech that almost gave me a burnout here. We received quite a few of them over the years, and well, recently we just got a whole bunch of them from a fight between Clan Wolf and Clan Ellsworth, having to fix them and try to resell them, basically, because Clan Wolf didn't want anything to do with them. I've had my hands in many of them, and I have to say here, I don't like having to build them, rebuild them, paint them, or anything of the sort. And it might not be anything with the Balius itself, but it's just a thing that I genuinely dislike. It's not even that I don't like quads. There's some of them that I actually enjoy, but there's just a thing about that particular mech that I do not like. So let's get into it and let's look at this particular machine. The clan invasion was set up fairly straightforward by the people in the clans by doing what they were very good at doing, which was trials. There were placement trials to know who was going to go in and when. The four big boy clans were the Jade Falcon, Ghost Bear, Smoke Jaguars, and Wolves, because they won their placement trials and did very good at it. The Wolves being the ones that basically decided where they were going to go, and the others, well, getting a good idea of where their invasion corridor was going to be. There was also reserve clans like the Steel Viper, Nova Cats, and Diamond Shark, which won the right to be, the backup units if something went wrong. And of course, well, something did go wrong, so they did have the chance of going in and helping out when it was actually ready. There were other clans, though. The people of Ellsworth was an example of this, as a Crusader clan that, well, didn't manage to win the rights to come in as a backup unit. You also have the Cloud Cobra and the Star Adder, those kind of people that were really wanting to go in, but, didn't really win anything of any significant manner here. What the other clans had to do here was bite their tongues and saw the invader clans conquer rich worlds and prove that they were probably stronger than the others just because that they were able to actually win at things until they started losing at things, and that's when things went bad. Clan Ellsworth, though, did get a landhold in the Inner Sphere after a refusal war, as Vlad the Chad Ward was trying to rebuild his Toman and basically trade a tree world for a bunch of fresh new warriors in 3063. I mean, the battle between Clan Jade Falcon and Clan Wolf had been pretty darn bad, and the Clan Wolf trying to rebuild itself through Vlad Ward was, well, needing all sorts of things to help them out. It wasn't much, but these did whet the appetite of the carnivorous equine that is the Clan Ellsworth. And I mean, if you ever saw a real Ellsworth, you would freak the fuck out as well, because those things are really, really ugly and mean. The people in the Ellsworth don't like us saying that, but I mean, I wouldn't want to see a horse looking like that to begin with. The Ghost Bears did kick them out of the Inner Sphere a few years later, but a plan was put in place between the Horses and all of their friends to come back to the Inner Sphere without breaking the hard-earned SLDF truce, well, that they were built by all sorts of different things through Operation Serpent and the Battle of Tukayid and all those different things. What the Horses did during their invasion of the Invader was play some of the best politics a clan can actually do, allying themselves with the people of Ice Alliance in order to hit the Clan Wolf and claiming about 30 worlds in the process. I mean, it was a pretty good little bet here that they wanted to do, and they were quite proud of what they did. But then they turned on Clan Ice Alliance and they decided that they were going to join with Clan Jade Falcon, getting rid of their troublesome ally while securing a stronger foothold in the Inner Sphere with a friendly clan that was going to, help them out if needed. Even with the War of Reavings going around and collapsing their holding in clan space, the Horses stood fairly strong in the Inner Sphere and held what they could there. In Clan Homeworld, apparently, the Ellsworths that were still sticking around there rebranded themselves as Clan Stone Lion, so who knows what is really going on over there. What we don't know much of is actually what kind of mech forces the Ellsworths really had at the time and before. Really, during all the fights that we had with the Ellsworths in the Inner Sphere, what we saw is a whole lot of elementals and tanks, because Clan Ellsworth really liked those things. They're probably one of the better combined armed clan out there. They have a better understanding of how to use conventional forces, let's say, compared to a lot of the other clans. But as far as their mechs goes, most of the time what we saw, at least around here, was a whole bunch of these standard omnimechs, the ones that everybody were using during the invasion, along with a few of the other regular 2Cs that we used to see, and just a few odd things, like the Corvus, which was still in use by Clan Elzors during the time. I'm going to go on a limb here and say that if the other clans had played the same game as Clan Elzors, they might have actually been more successful during the invasion, which is a thing that a lot of people don't like hearing because, well, they don't like hearing that the clans might have been actually better during the invasion in any way, shape, or form. There's also the thing that if they had practiced fighting against Clan Elzors, they would have been ready a little bit more for the massive amounts of conventional equipment that the Inner Sphere threw at them during the invasion, especially during things like the Battle of Tukayid. They were not using artillery a whole lot, at least not originally, because none of the clans really were, so they wouldn't have been able to practice for, you know, that part of things. But it would have been better for a lot of people if they had learned a little bit of the lessons of the Hellshorses. One thing that's a bit confusing about them, though, is that we have not seen a whole lot of totems from our friends in Elzors, and, well, that's what we're going to be taking a peek at now. One thing we do know about is the Thunder Stallion, which was floating around and was used almost exclusively by Clan Elzors, but, you know, there were a few of them in some reserve units of the invading clans because, well, that's what you do with Isorla, you use them when you need them. This was the original totem mech from 2850, and it was meant to support combined armed unit formation and provide fire support for most of those little formations. What you have is a very big gun and a whole lot of missiles, which, you know, will work fairly well, and you can kick with all four of the legs if need be. None of the other clans really went out of their way in order to get it, and it's not an omnimech, and the quads were not really favored by anybody, so it kind of lingered in clan space, and I don't see this thing, you know, making a comeback anytime soon. The Balius was introduced as a new totem machine in the mid-3070s as the Orcs were carving their place in the Inner Sphere. Unlike the Stallion, this thing was one of the most advanced machine ever built at the time, and it used all the weight-saving technology and equipment as possible on a quad chassis, with a lot of limited internal space to begin with. This would cause some issues with the machine and would focus it on very specific types of weapons and loadouts, which might be a little bit of an issue if you're trying to run a whole lot of battle armors and carrying them with the Balius. The other slight issue that the Balius has was that every machine was hand-built by Select Technician at the behest of Clan Elzors Khan at the time. It was a massive honor to receive one, and it was a massive honor to pilot one in the brave fight of the clan, but it became a bit of an issue here because it was a really terrible idea in terms of logistics. You didn't have enough spare parts, you didn't have enough equipment to keep it running, and while the morale of the troop was up because you had that fancy totem up in front, as soon as you lost one, well, you would not have that fancy totem machine in front anymore, and it would take an eternity to be fixed. Thankfully, more recently, a lot of those things have been built following a more standard process, meaning that you can actually find spare parts when required, and you just need to go to Clan Elzor's space and spend a decent amount of money in order to get them. So the Balius is a 65-ton omnimech in the same range as your Hellbringer, Linebacker, and Ebon Jaguar, and that's a bit of a rough spot for many omnimechs because you have to start trading one thing for another. Are you going to be able to go fast but not carry too many weapons, or go decently fast and just have too many weapons and no armor? I mean, you have to start trading things in that particular range. It just is how it is in that mid-range of the heavies. At the art of the design is a massive 390 XL, which gives you a top speed of 98 kilometers per hour, which is similar to your Linebacker, and you get 10 double heat sinks that sit pretty in that massive engine, meaning that, well, you might not be as well cooled as you would like because The rest of the internals is taken up a lot by Indo Steel, which makes up your skeleton, and 11 tons of the good ferrofibrous armor, which means it is one of the tougher machines out there. But, I mean, you don't have a whole lot of room on a quad to begin with. A brilliant engineer decided to mount a flamer directly in the mech's mount, which would leave you with 20 tons of pod space, which is a little bit tight as far as this mech goes. The prime configuration of the Balius is actually quite simple, and it's effective in long-term operations. All the configurations have the gear mounted in the torso here, and in this case, what you have is a pair of ER large lasers as a primary sniping weapons, with a pair of medium pulse lasers at closer range for more accurate support. You also have a pair of rear-mounted medium pulse laser to protect your back because, well, you don't have a turret or torso twisting capability on this particular quad. Some quads do have turrets, and I think it should be something that is looked into a little bit more nowadays. You get 4 extra double heat sinks as well to help manage your heat curve. This one is, well, quite functional in its particular role, but you might think it's a little bit undergunned unless you swap those rear-mounted lasers to face forward, which will leave your back unprotected. It is up to the pilot at that point. Alpha configuration uses brand new weapons for its time in order to make a point that this thing could actually be pretty good. The Hyper Assault Gauss was introduced by Clan Ellsworth in 3068, and the Alpha version of the Balius packs a 20 class AG with 3 tons of reload as its primary weapon, meaning that you will be able to stay in the fight a decent amount of time. On the opposite torso, you carry an ER large laser and an ER medium laser for support at long and medium range, because there is a minimum range on that Hyper Assault Gauss. You also have a pair of ER medium lasers pointing backwards for extra protection, but some people might swap them forward just in case. Bravo configuration is meant to use the speed of the Balius in order to be able to deal far more damage. The main weapon is arguably a pair of ER large lasers in the horse's shoulder with a rear-facing large pulse laser, which basically allows you to fart rainbows, basically. It's an odd setup. Once again, maybe you should flip that large pulse laser forward, but I mean, it's up to the pilot there. But really, your main source of damage on that particular thing is an array of 8 heavy small lasers, or improved heavy small lasers depending on the situation, which have a pitiable range compared to most clan weapons, but will give you a massive amount of damage. You get 2 extra double heat sinks in order to help with the heat curve, which will be required with how heat intensive those heavy small lasers would be. There is an AH configuration of the Balius. This would be the closest thing to it. Charlie configuration is your fire support unit with some missiles and some lasers, just to be able to do just about everything. Each shoulder mounts a 9-tube of advanced tactical missile fed by 2 tons of reload each, which will come pretty tight fairly quickly, because that's not a whole lot of missile, unfortunately. As a backup, you have a pair of shoulder-mounted ER medium laser with 2 medium pulse lasers to cover your rear. At this point, I would really flip everything to face forward, or maybe replace the ER medium lasers with 2 extra tons of reloads for the ATMs and put the medium pulse lasers pointing forward. It's a little bit odd here. Delta configuration goes even harder in mobility than some previous versions by giving it some jump jets. With the full array there, you can jump 180 meters, which is quite nice, but on a quad mech, it starts being a little bit weird. It does do some pretty nasty death from above if you know what you're doing, but it's still a risky enough maneuver. You do get some pretty nice long-range firepower on there as well, as you have a ER PPC, and on the opposite shoulder, you've got an array of ER medium lasers as well. You still have a pair of medium pulse lasers pointing backwards, and you definitely don't have enough heat sinks to keep it cool. It's an odd type of setup. I mean, you could take out the jump jets and start moving things around, but I mean, the problem is really how much space you have in the internals in these things. So even if you remove the jump jets, you can't just add more heat sinks because, well, you just don't have the room for them. This is what makes the Balius a little bit odd as a machine. Clan Ellsworth must have had some sort of submarine force at some point, because they did grace us with a uniform configuration of the Balius as well, meant for combat underwater. Your end-mounted flamer is now absolutely useless because, well, flamers underwater will just make a whole lot of steam and not much else, but you do have a pair of shoulder-mounted ER large lasers, which is pretty good in that situation. You also have a set of 24 tubes of short-range torpedoes, which is going to be pretty devastating once you get close enough. You get an ECM system on top of all things here for additional defense, and 5 UMUs allow you to move decently fast underwater. All in all, it's not the worst or the best kind of setup out there. You could swap those short-range torpedoes for short-range missile if required, and replace the UMUs with jump jets and be an okay jumper, I guess, but probably not the best mech in its category. Echo configuration is a more recent setup that started showing up during the Republican era, and it uses tech that was aggressively borrowed from all the other clans that they have access to, mainly Clan Jade Falcon and Clan Wolf. Each shoulder mounts a pretty fancy modern weapon, starting with a 15 rack of Streak LRM provided by Clan Jade Falcon, fed by 2 tons of reload. The relationship between Clan Ellsworth and Clan Jade Falcon is generally good, or was generally good until very recently. So for that particular weapon, well, the requirements were not as bad to be able to acquire them. On the opposite, though, you have an ER large pulse laser, one of Clan Wolf's pride and joy, and a 6 tube of Streak SRM. The ER large pulse lasers, on the other hand, are very, very rare, because they're not produced in very large amount to begin with, and Clan Wolf doesn't like to trade them to other people. So the fact that these things mount them regularly is a bit of a concern. I have seen quite a few here just using the regular large pulse laser instead, and I think it's actually a better setup. Finally, the rear is protected by an improved heavy medium laser, which is, well, aggressively borrowed from Clan Goliath Scorpion originally, but other people have started using improved heavy lasers over the years as well. Foxtrot configuration is an extremely simple design that was built by the Ellsworths in order to be able to fight some of their neighbors more recently. It's extremely straightforward. This design includes an extra 3 double heat sinks and a targeting computer for extra precision. The rest of your pod space is occupied by 7 medium pulse laser, with one of them pointing backwards, giving you really accurate, deadly mid-range firepower that you're able to use thanks to the speed of the Balius. It's very simple, it is very straightforward, and it's going to do a very nice job. In 3147, the Balius started having competition from a brand new totem omnimech with the Doom Courser, which has been in production, well, a little bit more heavily than the Balius was originally. At 70 tons, it is bulkier than the Balius, and it's much slower with a top speed of 64 kilometers per hour. It is meant to be an escort for other quad Vs or other land vehicles. What does make it great, though, is the inclusion of a turret on its back, meaning that you no longer have to keep mounting weapons backward. You just mount everything that you want on the turret, and it just spins around depending on the need. With almost 30 tons of pod space, you also beat the Balius on that front by being only 5 tons heavier, and having a much smaller engine means that it's actually easier to produce as well. So I have a feeling that the Doom Courser will be the more standard quad totem in the near future. Some people seem to think that I don't like quad mechs, but it's mostly because they're limited by their internal capacity. Some people are able to make very good quad mechs, but they have to think outside the box a little bit. The Balius suffers really from this. Having a low internal capacity means that you have to put a whole lot of the weapons all on the torsos, meaning that you have a bit less variety than you normally would on an omnimech in the end. It's decently fast, it's decently armored, and with a good pilot in it, it would be able to cause quite a bit of damage. It has some odd quirks and odd issues with it, and in the end, it's a mech that I truly despise just because of just how it is. I've been having issues even just recording this review here because I just really don't like the thing. I hope you guys still have a very nice rest of your day, though, and if there is anything else, remember that you can leave a comment, and I will try to read and reply to those that I can. So have a very nice day. Bye-bye.